Hi Team We Run, Coach Alexa here, coach for Reading, South Oxfordshire and also the internet. Lou posted a great question last week about perimenopause, the menopause and the impact that this has on our running and training. So I thought I'd talk through things. The caveat to this video being this is at a very high level. It's a very complex topic and the menopause and perimenopause has a massive and very diverse range of physical and psychological symptoms, and it also affects each woman very differently. Some people sail through it with taking very little notice of what's going on, not noticing what's going on. Other people really go through the ringer in terms of symptoms. So and none of this can replace any advice from a medical professional. So if you're experiencing symptoms that you're worried about, absolutely go and see your doctor. But let's have a little bit of a summary, just as a scene set. So perimenopause is the period between having a regular period or menstrual cycle and your period stopping. So the menopause itself is defined as you not having had a period for at least a year. But many of us will experience a bit of a fluctuation, a regular cycle coming and going of that menstrual cycle. So effectively the perimenopause is when it stops being a regular menstrual cycle, but before it stops completely. And sometimes that time period can go on for a good number of years with fantastic, unpredictable fun involved there. So let me just talk through a few of the interesting things that can happen specifically when it comes to our training and our running. Obviously there are loads of other impacts that perimenopause and the menopause has. So generally, the biggest things that are causative factors, I guess, as we go through the perimenopause into the menopause is that our estrogen levels drop. They fluctuate on the way, but generally they're going on a downward trajectory. And also our progesterone levels do as well. Mostly the symptoms that we notice are because those estrogen levels are dropping. So as an example, our body shape changes. So it's the estrogen that generally gives us a little bit more of kind of storing body fat around the bottom, the thighs, the hips, and so when that estrogen starts to disappear, we have more of a tendency to almost follow a more male pattern of storing body fat around our bellies. And it also impacts muscle mass as well. So this is a big one to think about when it comes to training, because we are less able to maintain our muscle mass. It breaks down quicker. So we need to work harder to maintain it. Strength training, I would say, is absolutely key for all runners, but it becomes even more important to take it seriously and start upping the weight and the challenge level that you do with your strength training to maintain that muscle mass and stop it from dropping off too noticeably. And the other thing, you need to train your body in order to stimulate it to maintain and grow more muscle mass, but you also need to give it high quality regular intakes of protein in order for it to be able to build that new muscle mass. So thinking about the quality, the quantity and the frequency of your protein. The right answer for that will be different for everybody, but that's a key thing to think about when it comes to our training. The other thing, I guess, related to our sort of musculoskeletal system is that estrogen is a protective kind of hormone in terms of our bone density. So when those estrogen levels drop, so does our bone density. So you probably don't notice that so much until you're a little bit further down the line. It might make you more likely to get a stress fracture when it comes to running. So if the bones are overloaded beyond what they can cope with, you're more likely to get stress fractures. And then, you know, when we get into our 70s, 80s, 90s, then there's the risk of higher risk of breaks with trips and falls and things like that. So again, that's another one to watch. I mean, running itself is a protective mechanism there because impact sports stimulate the bones to be growing stronger. Things like calcium, vitamin D will help in your diet to make sure we maintain that bone density. The other interesting one is the impact that the menopause can have on our digestive system. So it can cause just sort of generalised GI issues, but there's a couple of specific things that are worth thinking about. One of which is we become more sensitive to carbohydrates. And there are two sort of specific aspects of that to think about our run fueling. One of which, we often, as we go through the perimenopause and menopause, become more sensitive to fructose. So if you look at the back of gel and sports drinks packets, you'll see different types of sugar. There's maybe sucrose, glucose, fructose. It's also sometimes labelled as fruit sugar to make it sound more healthy. And it is also a type of sugar that you get more often in fruits, hence the name. And we tend to become a bit more sensitive to that. So if you might have noticed that sort of gels or sports drinks that you previously really got on well with and you don't anymore, and they're giving you maybe some GI type symptoms, it might be worth just looking at how much fructose there is and picking a gel that doesn't have that fructose in them and sticking more to glucose and sucrose. The other thing that happens when our estrogen levels drop is that our sensitivity to insulin drops. So when we have a high insulin sensitivity, this means that as soon as there are some sugars or carbohydrates floating around the body reacts quite quickly to those small changes with insulin and balances them all out. As our insulin sensitivity drops, we don't react as quickly to manage those blood sugar levels. So we're more likely to get peaks and troughs in our blood sugar. So this again, when we're maybe taking on sort of carbohydrates or energy drinks or, that sort of things for our pre and during run fueling, we will tend to be a bit more sensitive to those. So thinking about a more smoothed out carbohydrate strategy, it's likely going to change your fueling strategy pre and during run to what it was pre-menopause. So just thinking about maybe smoothing things out. We're not going to be dealing with particularly those quick release carbohydrates in the same way as we would do previously. So those are a few of the key things to watch out for. And like Lou said in her post, often because those estrogen levels, they fluctuate anyway, we're used to that, right, with our monthly cycles, but they will be on a general downward trajectory for most of us throughout that perimenopause period. And often they sneak up on us, those sort of changes a little bit. It takes a while for us to notice them. HRT effectively just gives us a bit more estrogen in sort of drug form. So you often find with the doctor will ramp up slowly the dosage so you get the lowest possible dose for the best benefits. So that will reverse or halt quite a lot of those symptoms that you get with our progressive estrogen drop. Different types of HRT, all sorts of complexity out there. Definitely a topic to talk to about with your doctor, not with your running coach. Hope that's useful. Happy running.